Going to go ahead and get started today. Representative Tatum.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks everyone for joining us today. We're going to be recording this and sharing it later. The live streaming feature is not working this morning, but nevertheless, thanks for being here live with us. My name is Brianna Tatum. I'm the state representative in House District 27. That's mostly the west side of Arvada. And we're going to talk to you today a little bit about the bills we're doing, how the process works, and give you a little update on all the things that are going to be happening at the Capitol during the session that just started last week. I will turn it over next to Senator Zenzinger and whatever introduction you like to give.
Great, thank you so much. So we're going to keep our updates pretty short here initially because the presentation could go pretty long. So we don't want to overstep our time today. But it was an exciting first week back after our month-long pause. We had a lot of exciting bills that were introduced, including a number of mine that I'll be talking about later today. In addition to that, it was very exciting because we got to hear the governor's State of the State address as well as the State of the Judiciary. Both of those speeches you can find available online on the legislative website, which is leg.colorado.gov. And then also I was able to chair my first education committee meeting this week, which was also very exciting. I'm going to leave my updates there just to make sure that we have enough time for our presentation today. And if we have time at the end, we'll make some announcements. And we also want to welcome the elected officials that have joined us. We'll do that up front here, and then we'll also do it at the end just to make sure that we've captured everybody that might be joining us late. So welcome.
And hi, everyone. Lindsey Daugherty, representative for House District 29. I had the pleasure of going back to the Capitol in person this week, and I was so excited. Two of my bills are actually going to be in committee next week, so we're definitely working through the process, and I'm very excited to talk to you all about all of my bills and what I'm working on as we go through today. So thanks for being here. Great to see everyone.
All right. Well, I guess we'll get on with introductions for the elected officials here. We have Commissioner Amy Kerr, and we have Commissioner Tracy Kraft-Tharp. Jeff, go commissioners. Anyone else in the attendees list that we see that might be here that we missed? Don't see anyone at this point, but if we do see anyone come in, we will make that announcement that they are here. So we'll get started with our presentation today, our legislative preview, and some basics that you'll need to know. Some of the things about the legislature: there are 100 lawmakers from across the state. 65 are House members. Of those 65, 41 are Democrats, 24 are Republicans, and we have 35 Senate members, 20 of which are Democrats and 15 are Republicans. And I think you're trying to talk, but it's
I am. So I believe the last slide was supposed to be Lindsey, but
okay.
Sorry about that. The House and Senate leadership this year, the Speaker of the House is Alec Garnett. He is the new Speaker of the House who was just elected. The former Speaker of the House was Casey Becker, and she was term limited. And Representative Garnett was the majority leader in the House, and he is now the Speaker. And then Senate President Leroy Garcia, he has served as the Senate President for the last 2 years, and he was elected as the Senate President once more.
Right. And Lindsey, go ahead, take this.
Oh, sure. So the leadership, the House Majority Leader is Representative Escar. The Minority Leader is Hugh McKean, who's actually the representative where I grew up in Loveland, where my parents still live. The Senate Majority Leader is Steve Feinberg, and the Senate Minority Leader is Chris Holbert.
And so the session meets for 120 days by statute. We convened on January 13th, and we only had a 3-day session. And things have gotten a little bit different in the legislature in terms of the calendar. After we had the COVID pandemic start, we actually got to take a recess, and we had the Supreme Court of Colorado chime in to make sure that we were able to maintain our 120 days spread out over a certain amount of time in the event that these unforeseen circumstances could take place. So we did recess on that 3rd day, and then we just came back on the 16th and we got started. And when we're going to end is not very clear right now, but we will finish all of our work and try to get done as quickly as we can. I don't think anyone wants to prolong this well into the summer, so we'll try to get our 120 days done as soon as we can.
So a little bit about the Colorado State Capitol. The House and Senate floors are off limits to the public unless you are invited. If you are a guest of a legislator, then you can be welcomed onto the floor. Lobbyists, on the other hand, are never allowed to enter into the chambers. The committee rooms are open to the public during our meetings, and because of COVID, we recommend that you participate remotely if you're interested. You can find the link to participate remotely on the legislative website under the committee section. For questions, if you're wandering around the Capitol and you're not sure where to go, or if you're trying to get in touch with your legislator, if you're down at the Capitol, then you should ask the people that are in the red or green jackets. Those are our Sergeant at Arms. The green jacketed Sergeant at Arms are in the House, and the red jacketed sergeants are in the Senate. Their jacket colors actually match the Senate or the chamber color as well. So the red jackets go to the red chamber, which is the Senate. The green jackets go to the green chamber, which is the House. And then lastly, you can also watch both the House and Senate in action from the 3rd floor House or Senate galleries, and you can also watch online. So Brianna is next.
You're mute.
You are mute.
Doesn't happen too often, but it does happen every once in a while. So the Capitol has several floors that you can visit. The basement doesn't have a lot going on there, but that's usually where people will enter into the south side of the building. But down there in the basement level, there's a little cafeteria, the State Patrol, and the Office of Legal Services. And those are a lot of the folks who are the attorneys working on the bills that we are running. On the 1st floor, that's most of the executive branch. We have the governor's office. The information desk is there, and you can see in the photograph, there's a group of people there. There's usually tours that happen on the Capitol floor on the 1st floor, and then there's also the north public entrance that's coming in on Colfax. A couple things to note right now. Some of those entrances are closed, and only the basement entrance is available to the public right now on the south side. On the 2nd floor, we have the Senate and House chambers. There's a few legislative offices there, and we also have the old Supreme Court, which actually is used as a committee room and for other functions, as well as the old State Library, which is our big committee room. And then on the 3rd floor, we have the gallery entrance where you can see the House and Senate, and a lot of legislative offices are there. My office is on the 3rd floor. And then we have the dome, and the dome, you would go through to the attic area, and then you would go up to the dome through a set of narrow stairs. And that you can't just go up on your own. You have to go on a tour to do it. But when those become available, if you have never done that, on a nice clear day, it's a beautiful spot to go check out. And that's open from 10 to 3 on weekdays.
So as Representative Tatone just said, not all the entrances are open right now. So there are 2 public entrances open right now, the East Colfax Avenue, that's on the building's north side, and there are stairs there. But the East 14th Avenue opening is on the south side of the basement and is wheelchair accessible. So you have to go through security when you get there, similar to the airport. You can't take anything into the Capitol you wouldn't take into an airport. And then they're also doing right now COVID screening. So someone will take your temperature and ask you a few questions about any symptoms you may have had, and then give you a bracelet that's different colored on each day. And then you will be allowed in.
Sorry, I have multiple screens and sometimes I'm not on the right one.
So a lot of people want to know, what's our schedule? What do lawmakers do every day? And so a typical calendar, a typical day will look like this. We convene in the chambers at 10 a.m. on Monday and 9 a.m. on Tuesday through Friday. We convene a little bit later on Monday because we have legislators that represent the entire state, and they have to come in from Montrose or Durango or Grand Junction. And so on Mondays, we tend to start a little bit later for that reason. When we convene in the chambers, we do what's called floor work. Floor work consists of hearing and voting on bills and proclamations and resolutions and tributes and those kinds of things. And it usually concludes about mid-morning. As the session progresses, floor work will take longer and longer, and then oftentimes we'll break for committees, and then sometimes we'll actually go back to the floor later in the afternoon. Committees will occur upon adjournment, which is when we break from our floor work, and committees begin at 1:30 in the afternoon. We also will hear bills in committees. So I think all 3 of the legislators and the majority of legislators sit on committees where we hear bills being presented. And then if we are not in committee at that time, then we meet with constituents, with lobbyists, respond to calls and emails. And then usually we attend meetings or receptions, or we sponsor constituent events prior to the convening in the morning. And then we do a lot of those during our lunch hour. And then we will go straight into the evening with meetings and receptions and sponsoring constituent events as well.
So committees, what committees am I on? I'm on 3 different committees. Most members are on 2 committees of reference. A committee of reference is a committee that hears bills on topics that are introduced by legislators. So those 2 committees that I'm on are the Energy and Environment Committee and the Health and Insurance Committee. I'm also, I was appointed to another committee called the Joint Technology Committee, and a joint committee is a committee that is made up of both House and Senate members and is bipartisan. So we meet to talk about technology projects pertaining to the state, and we are kind of the advisory committee for the JBC, the Joint Budget Committee, on what things to fund. So we can actually take a little bit closer look, where the Joint Budget Committee, has a very broad focus. We have a very narrow focus on the technology aspects, and we usually have members that have experience in this area of expertise. I have a master's degree in information communication technology, and that's why I'm on this committee. I was also appointed as a member of the State Internet Portal Authority, and that is an organization that does work for the government and other pseudo-governmental agencies as well. And a lot of the credit card processing for the state runs through the SIPA board. And they do anytime you pay the state with a credit card, it goes through one of their credit card processing things.
All right. And I was really excited about my committee assignments. Obviously, this is my first time as an elected official, and I'm on Appropriations, Finance, and Judiciary. And I was particularly excited about Judiciary since I'm an attorney, and I like reading a lot, especially getting into kind of the details of the law and how we can make those bills something that can be used in a courtroom where attorneys then can't construe them to how they want to. So anyway, I'm very excited about Judiciary. Looking forward to that one. And then we've had some SMART hearings, and then the first 3 days we were in session, I got a small taste of kind of what it feels like sitting on committee. So I'm really looking forward to doing that more in the coming weeks. So thank you.
So I am sitting on 3 committees this year. I am chair of the Senate Education Committee. I'm the vice chair of the Statutory Revision Committee, which is a joint committee with both House and Senate members. And I am a member of the Transportation and Energy Committee. Those are my 3 committees of reference where we will hear bills and make a determination about legislation moving forward. But in addition to that, I do sit and was appointed on a number of extraneous committees where there is a legislative appointment. The first of which is the Cdot Efficiency and Accountability Committee. I've been on this committee for a number of years now. I'm also a member of the SIPA board, the Statewide Internet Portal Authority, same as Rep. Tatone. I'm also was an appointed member of the Education Commission of the States, and I am the legislative appointment to the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, the CHAFA board. And then finally, I am also the legislative appointment to the Colorado Commission on Higher Education.
All right, so now we're gonna go just pause for a minute to watch this 6-minute video. And it's gonna just explain to you how the legislative process works. And if everything works well, I'm just gonna push this button and it'll play in the window. If not, I will have to do something else, but let's see if that works. And it didn't do it. So I'm gonna have to give you a different screen and we'll do it that way, but I'm prepared for that. So don't worry about it. Of course, now I can't find it. It was right there a minute ago. So hold on one second. Let me just get that. I think it's because this is like maximized and now it's gone. So there we go. Now I can do it. And here we go. And we'll watch this video.
I do not hear the sound. So I think we're gonna have to pause and see if we can get the sound working.
I guess the question is, can the attendees hear the video? Because if the attendees can hear the video, that's one step in the right direction. They cannot.
They cannot.
They cannot hear it either. Well, I had it working before, and now it doesn't work now. Isn't that how things always go? Let me just see if I can change that to.
While Rep. Tatone is working on the sound, I'll just explain a little bit about this YouTube video. It's a pretty clever video that the legislature actually has on our website, the leg.colorado.gov. And it's a YouTube video that just kind of goes through how a bill becomes a law. We've showed this video in the past, and hopefully we can get it working this time around, because I think it does a pretty good way of breaking down the process. It sometimes gets a little complicated because you've got House bills and you've got Senate bills and you've got two chambers, and the process of becoming a bill becoming a law can be a little cumbersome at times. So, but if we can't get it working, then we'll just move on.
Yeah, that's I thought I had the setting before to get it to work, and I can't find that setting now.
And one of the suggestions is to put the link for the video in the chat, and then people can watch the video on their own. Just make sure to copy the link in the chat into your browser. That way you have it when we end the Zoom today.
Yeah, there it is. And let me just see if there's one more control here that I can do. Okay, I think this might work.
Way through. And at the end, you'll be a civics pro. It all starts with the Colorado Constitution. Article 3 of the Colorado Constitution designates 3 separate and distinct branches of government: the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. The General Assembly is the entity where bills are written, debated, and voted on to become law. The Colorado General Assembly has 2 chambers: the House of Representatives and the Senate. The House has 65 members and the Senate has 35, for a total of 100 members. The General Assembly is guided by the state constitution to meet 120 consecutive days, beginning no later than the second Wednesday in January. Historically, the General Assembly considers fewer than 1,000 bills, resolutions, and memorials during a legislative session. However, there are other ways to create laws in Colorado other than the General Assembly passing a bill into law. A law can also be created through the initiative process, where citizens circulate and sign petitions to place an issue on the ballot, so Colorado voters can directly approve or reject an idea. The General Assembly can also refer a bill to the voters at a general election. If the voters approve, the bill becomes a law. This is called a referendum. But where do bills originate? Where do the ideas that become bills come from? Ideas for laws can come from anywhere: cities, counties, state agencies, businesses, organizations, special interest groups, and individual citizens. If a legislator is approached with an idea, he or she can decide to sponsor that idea and request a bill be drafted by the Office of Legislative Legal Services. Every bill must have a prime sponsor from each chamber before a draft bill can be created. Once the initial sponsor approves the draft bill, the bill is delivered to either the House or Senate to be introduced. When a bill is introduced, it is assigned a bill number and assigned to a committee for public hearing. The title is read aloud by the reading clerk. This constitutes the first reading of the bill. Committees usually focus on particular issues such as education, transportation, or public health. Each committee must hold a public hearing on every bill assigned to it. When a committee meets, the sponsor will explain the bill. Anyone from the community can attend this meeting to voice their support, express concerns, or suggest changes. However, only committee members may offer an amendment that the committee can act on. A committee can then do several different things. It may recommend the bill with or without amendments. It can postpone the bill indefinitely, essentially killing the bill. It can hold the bill over for another hearing in the same committee, or it can refer the bill to another committee with or without amendments. A committee report is then issued that formalizes the committee's activity. Bills that are favorably recommended are then placed on the calendar for consideration on second reading, with any accompanying committee reports. The second reading of a bill involves the entire chamber forming a committee of the whole, or COW, and there are no time limits on debate. Here, members debate the merits of the bill and may offer amendments. A voice vote is usually all that is required for approval, with the appointed chairperson of the COW determining the fate of the bill. However, a member may request a division vote where members must stand in support or opposition of the bill. If the bill is approved, then the bill and any approved amendments are combined into a new document that is called an engrossed bill. That bill is then placed on the calendar for third reading. Third reading is where the final debate and recorded vote on the bill occurs. If the bill is approved by recorded vote, the engrossed bill and any approved third reading amendments are then combined into a re-engrossed bill. The bill then goes to the other chamber, where the same process starts all over again. When and if the second chamber approves the bill on second reading, it then becomes a revised bill. If the bill makes it all the way through the third reading in the second chamber, it becomes a re-revised bill and is sent back to the first chamber, where any amendments made by the other chamber must be approved. Are you confused yet? If the bill passes through both chambers without any changes, or if the first chamber accepts the changes made by the second chamber, it is sent to the governor for action. If the first chamber rejects any amendments made by the second chamber, the sponsor can ask for a conference committee, which is made up of 3 members from each chamber. These individuals then try to iron out the differences between the 2 chambers and reach an agreement. If they can reach an agreement, then a report that contains the conference committee's suggestions is issued. If both chambers adopt the report, then the bill is sent to the governor for his or her action. The governor then has 3 options once their office receives a bill. The governor can sign the bill into law, he or she can veto the bill, or he or she can let the bill become law without their signature. A bill becomes law without the governor's signature after 10 days if he or she receives the bill during the legislative session, or after 30 days if he or she receives the bill after the General Assembly has adjourned. If the governor vetoes the bill before the General Assembly adjourns, it goes back to the General Assembly for more consideration. If a bill can be approved by 2/3 of the members in each chamber, the veto is overridden and the bill becomes a law. Vetoes occurring after the General Assembly adjourns are final. So that's it. That's how a bill becomes a law in Colorado. There are tools that can help you follow the process. The calendar, journal, and status sheet are ways to track bills and see when debates will occur. All of these documents and more are available online at the General Assembly's website, and additional information is available at the Colorado Channel website. Thanks for watching, and we hope that this program will help you become more informed about making law in Colorado.
All right.
So,
sorry,
sorry, go ahead.
So that was an informative video, and we've also got an article by the Colorado Sun. It's called A Citizen's Guide to Lawmaking and Lobbying in Colorado. And I believe the link is in the chat for anyone that just wants a more comprehensive approach and guide to kind of how all of that works. So definitely feel free to check that out if you have time.
So as you just heard in the video, each legislator is permitted to sponsor, be the prime sponsor of 5 regular bills. That's what they're called. So your first bill that you file is called the pre-file bill. And ordinarily that pre-file bill title is due to the drafters by December 1st. So there's very little time after the election, less than a month usually, to file your first regular bill. Your first 3 regular bills are all due on that deadline. And then your remaining 2 regular bills are due a few weeks later. You can get what's called a late bill, and a late bill would be in addition to your 5 regular bills. And the way that you would get a late bill is by seeking permission from leadership. That would be the Speaker of the House, the Majority Leader, the Senate President, or the Majority Leader in the Senate. Generally speaking, you're supposed to have permission of 2 of the 3 leaders. So the Minority Leader is also considered one of the leaders that could grant permission. You can co-sponsor an unlimited number of bills. That means that you're putting your name on that bill. You generally support that bill, but you're not necessarily the prime sponsor of that bill that's driving the process. You can co-sponsor a bill before introduction by signing onto it. Generally, what they ask is that you alert the bill drafter and or sign your initials on the paper copy of the bill. And then once it's introduced, you cannot co-sponsor until the bill passes on 3rd reading. And then during 3rd reading, after it passes, they will ask if anyone is interested in co-sponsoring the bill, and you can be added as a co-sponsor at that time. You can be a prime sponsor of unlimited number of bills that are starting in the opposite chamber. So for example, I can be a prime sponsor of unlimited number of House bills that start in the House. But I can only be the prime sponsor of 5 regular bills in the Senate chamber unless I receive late bill permission. And then the same goes for the House members. They can sponsor an unlimited number of Senate bills that start in the Senate. You can also co-sponsor an unlimited number of resolutions. And then in addition to Senate bills and House bills, we also have a number of other things called House resolutions, House joint resolutions, which means they start in the House, but then will also be voted on by the Senate, Senate resolutions, which only stay in the Senate, or Senate joint resolutions, which start in the Senate, but then must be voted on by both chambers. We also have things called memorials, and they are used for what you would think, which would be to memorialize a person that may have passed. But memorials are also used to communicate with the federal government. And it's kind of strange sometimes when you're listening to a memorial about like the Space Command, for example, and you're wondering why are we talking about it as a memorial? It just turns out that the only way that we can communicate with the federal government formally is through a memorial.
All right, next slide. All right, so I'm going to talk about my first 5 regular bills. You'll probably notice that there's 6 there, but it's because when there are bills that we're looking to get on to have bipartisan support, we are often given permission to do that. So my first pre-file bill, which was my first bill, was the mental health wellness exam bill. And that bill is going to give people the option to take a mental health wellness exam very similarly to a physical that you would get every year that's of no cost to you. And we really believe that this is going to help a lot of people find the issues that they have in their mental health earlier and have a lot of prevention of crisis services that are going on right now, because that's how our health system is really set up, is that when it comes to mental health things, most of the things are addressed in a crisis scenario. And we want to avoid that. We want to make sure we're getting to people early so we can address their problems. This is really important right now because there are some other states that are also trying to do this. And this is considered to be a mandate, a new mandate on insurance. But I would say that it's really not, because the federal government has already said that there should be parity between mental health and physical health. We already offer that physical health exam. We should have been giving this kind of exam to people for many, many years already. So we're just trying to catch up with what's going on with the federal government with parity in health insurance. My other pre-file bill is careless driving bodily injury. That was a bill that I ran with Representative Larson last year. He brought it back as his pre-file bill. So I ended up with 2 pre-file bills. This is just a bill that changes the statute on if a pedestrian gets hit or anybody else. There was a long list of things that saying someone on a bike, someone on a stroller. It's just, if you hit anybody walking on the street, it's all treated the same way. That bill and the next bill with my broadband deployment board bill are both going to be in committee on Wednesday at 1:30. So you can always listen in to the committee hearings online through the legislative website, or you can go in person and attend, but there are limitations right now for a number of people that can attend in person. So online is a good place to go watch or listen rather. The Broadband Deployment Board bill is changing the structure and the functions of the Broadband Deployment Board. We have a board that distributes money through a high cost support mechanism fund, and that is money that is obtained through landline phone connections. And that money is basically used for installation of new broadband projects across the state, focusing really on the rural areas. And the Broadband Deployment Board has some issues getting money out the door because we don't have enough information to do it. So we're working on mapping to make sure we can find out where there's service and where there's not service and what the speed of the service is. And we can get the money out to those providers who want to provide internet to those folks. We're making sure that these projects are being taken into consideration with higher priority to those offering low cost plans for people who can't afford their internet. So we want to make sure that people in those rural areas who may not be able to afford it have an option to be able to get some kind of internet, because internet is becoming more and more of a service we all need as the pandemic has really shown. The next one is the Kiowa Governance and Dispute Resolution. Kiowa, as we call it, the CCIOA is the Common Interest Community governing documents in the statute. And these are the laws pertaining to HOAs. And if you've ever had a nasty dispute in an HOA, you know that there's very few things that you can do to get recourse. And a lot of the times, boards of directors can be, bullies, and they can really make someone's life miserable if they don't like you by putting fines on things unnecessarily and all sorts of different things. So this bill, we've been working with lots of different homeowners across the state and other stakeholders to find ways that we can better empower the residents of these communities to make sure that they're not being taken advantage of in these things. So digital right to repair, that one's going to be about what people are fixing their own stuff. A lot of companies have control over the things that you own, and you can't get them fixed anywhere but where they tell you you can. And this bill is going to be an important bill to empower people and small repair companies to be able to repair digital items, motorized wheelchairs, and farm equipment, which is very thin. And then I have another bill, which is the state web portal for business. That one I'll let Senator Zenzinger talk about because she's also on that bill. And I'll just move on to my next slide here. For my Senate bills, natural organic reduction, you probably remember that from last year. That one's coming back out of the Senate. It's already through the committee. It'll be going to second reading soon. Freedom to be able to do what you want when you die. If you want to be turned to soil, then that's your thing. Let's do it. Then we have the talking book library fundings. I'll let Senator Zenzinger talk about that one. It's another bill I'm on with her. Criminal theft of rental property. It's a bill that would increase the value of something if you steal something from a rental place. To the rental place, it has a lot higher value because it's part of their income. And this would work on changing the statute to make sure that these kinds of things are not stolen and really hurting the businesses that are trying to make a living renting these things at an affordable price. And then I have another bill for increasing medical providers for senior citizens, also a bill from last year, changing the statute to make sure that senior citizens are in old policies that they have, that there's some loopholes there that are preventing them from getting some of the services they need, and this is going to change that. And then I also have two bills from the Joint Technology Committee. Joint Technology Committee can do as many bills as we need to across the year, aside from our bills, and I have OIT definitions and governance. We're modernizing the Office of Information Technology in the governor's office, and then we have another bill on SIPA contract negotiations. So that's a whole mouthful, and sorry if that took too long. Whoops, there we go.
All right. So I've got the first one, a jurisdiction to modify family law orders on appeal. So the Colorado Supreme Court last year ruled that district courts lose jurisdiction over parental rights cases that are currently being appealed. So this gives back jurisdiction to district courts with child support and maintenance, with the goal being that we can move along these cases when kids are involved so that we can get permanency for the kids, and that something's not hanging out in appellate court for a year. I've got a teaching and learning and conditions learning survey bill. So currently the biennial teaching and learning conditions surveys are given to Colorado public school teachers. The language currently excludes education support professionals. So this would just allow them to have a voice in that survey. I've got a foster youth and transition bill, which I am working with Senator Zenzinger on. She's taking that over in the Senate. This allows youth who've opted out of the system to opt back in through a petition process in order to continue to have access to services. And I've got a juvenile sentencing bill, and that ensures that juveniles who are direct transferred and convicted of a crime of violence are not subject to mandatory minimums. So this was an oversight. There was another bill who stated that any juveniles who are transferred over would also not be subject to the mandatory minimum. So we're just making sure that there's not a discrepancy between those two. The goal is to keep kids out of jail. I have a workers' compensation bill, which limits the definition of the overpayment of work comp benefits to include only benefits paid as a result of fraud or duplicate benefits. So this allows, this makes sure that insurance companies aren't requiring insurance holders to pay back. So when someone gets to the end of their case and they've had the recommended treatment, they aren't required to pay back any sort of over payment that may have occurred that the insurance companies are talking about. So we just don't want people to get to the end of their cases and have to pay back money for treatment that they needed. I've also got a few more that I picked up. I've got a juvenile bed cap bill, which reduces the amount of juveniles that can be incarcerated at one time. I've got a juvenile parole bill that allows persons who are convicted of a crime when they are under the age of 25 to be eligible for parole when they serve 50% of their sentence, which I think is a really fantastic policy that encourages people to be able to have a life and get out and be productive citizens. And I've got a suicide prevention bill. So unfortunately, we're dealing with population, especially because of this last year, and especially unfortunately that have to do with kids and children. So this focuses on broadening the state's priorities and focuses on suicide and suicide attempts and the after effects, and gives help to survivors, friends, and families. So I went through those fairly quickly because of time, but I'm very excited about these areas that I'm working on. So if anyone has any other questions, I will put my information in the chat. Feel free to reach out directly. Thank you all.
I don't know, Brianna, if you're able to advance to the next slide. These were mixed up. So I want to talk, there we go, about my first 5 regular bills first. So my pre-file bill was actually my hold harmless for school finance bill. But that bill was not introduced in our first 3 days. And so it kind of became a moot point. And so I worked with the Joint Budget Committee during our month-long break. And in fact, they took up that issue and move forward with it. So they essentially incorporated my pre-file bill into the education supplemental bill. And so I ended up not introducing my pre-file bill for introduction. But I am really pleased that I'm going to be able to co-sponsor as the education chair with the Joint Budget Committee that education supplemental bill. Secondly, my second bill is this concept called sub-minimum wage for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So there was a 1923 law that was put into place that was really well-intentioned, that was meant to encourage private companies to actually hire people with an intellectual or developmental disability. If they did so, then they could receive a waiver from the federal government to charge them less than minimum wage. Since that time, we have had a lot of developments in civil rights for people with disabilities. And right now, the current law is that every business must pay a minimum wage regardless of whether you have IDD or not, except that there are still 10 agencies in the state whose sole purpose is to employ folks with IDD, and they are still under that 1923 law that allows them to page less than minimum wage. The federal government is going to come along and actually eliminate this from their law. And so what we're doing is we're actually putting in place a graduated timeline for eliminating this sub-minimum wage here in Colorado, so that there's a softer landing for those 10 agencies that still use the sub-minimum wage. And we're very excited that all 10 of those agencies are on board with this concept because they understand that it's just a matter of fairness. My next bill is a bill that I was carrying last year, actually was not able to move forward with it because of the pandemic. It's an expansion of the alternative and complementary therapies for people with spinal cord injuries. If you have a spinal cord injury as your primary injury, or as your primary condition, you are eligible for Medicaid. And right now, you're not allowed to direct your Medicaid waiver for your own therapies. It's quite limited in what you're allowed to do with that, even though a spinal cord injury is your primary condition. We have a pilot program that is right here in the metro area that allows people with spinal cord injuries to use their Medicaid waiver for things like massage or acupuncture or other types of alternative therapies that prevent having to rely on opioids, for example. But it's a very small pilot program and it only applies to 200 people in the state. And we really feel that this type of option should be open to everybody in the state. So this bill would expand those therapies for everyone with a spinal cord injury. It doesn't cost the state anything because these individuals already have a Medicaid waiver. It just allows them to use that for the type of services that they would like. I also have a bill that I'm carrying with Representative Tatone on the Talking Book Library. The Talking Book Library is a fantastic resource for people who are blind or hard of seeing. And we have been funding this from year to year. So every year we have to carry a bill to fund this. And this would actually make the funding permanent so that we don't have to continue to do this on a case-by-case basis. My next bill is a really exciting bill. There was a committee that met all of last year during the pandemic that looked about how we could make the education system more resilient going forward. How can we look at the impacts of COVID and what could we do when we quote unquote get back to normal? How can we increase our education system resiliency and look at innovative initiatives for addressing things like the educator shortage, for example. This is a bill that I'm very excited to be carrying with the legislators who were on that committee. And we're going to be looking at a couple of different things to address the educator shortage. I'm sure you saw in the Denver Post that there was an article that mentioned how 40% of our educators are thinking about leaving the profession. So we definitely want to see what we can do to make our system more resilient. I'm also carrying a bill. This is actually a House bill. I thought it was a Senate bill, but it's going to be starting in the House. And it's an accreditation for apprenticeship training programs in order to allow a pathway into a construction management degree. And then also, I just received late bill status in order to introduce a bill that would change up the configuration of the Colorado Opportunities Scholarship Initiative Board of Directors. Right now, that board does not contain any students. There's no student voice that's on that board. And the board is heavily weighted towards the Department of Employment versus incorporating some of our higher education institutions. And so we're looking now that that program has been in place for 6 years to kind of change up the board composition. My House bills, I am carrying a bill with Representative Tatone. This is building on a bill that I carried last year that's trying to make the legislative changes and the rulemaking changes that happen a little bit more transparent to our business community. We know that many of our businesses want to stay in compliance with state law and with the rules that are developed from those laws, but it's very difficult for them to know when these laws pass and whether or not the laws and the subsequent rules apply to them. And so we're trying to find a way to make that more readily apparent and user-friendly for the businesses through this new web portal that we're designing. I'm also carrying a bill on behalf of child welfare workers. This was an issue that was brought to us. Right now, 40% of the cases of child abuse that result in death come from a domestic abuse situation. But right now in our child welfare statutes, there is no definition for what a domestic abuse situation is or even how to handle that. And so we're trying to align our statutes by taking a current definition on domestic abuse and applying it in the child welfare setting so that we can better support our child welfare caseworkers when they encounter that type of a situation. I am sponsoring the Foster Youth Transitions Bill with Representative Daugherty, which you already heard about. And then probably the bill that is receiving the most attention right now that is kind of a hot topic is a suspension of our state CMAS testing this spring. Every year we go through what's called the Colorado Measures for Academic Success. It's a standardized summative test that we administer every year. Last year, due to the pandemic, we halted that test. We didn't do it because the conditions were not safe and the kids were not in school. They were learning from home. And this year, this bill would suspend it for this year as well, since we are still in a pandemic and we still have students that are learning from home. You can find out more information about that, I'm sure, just by reading the newspaper or doing a quick scan of social media, because it's a really hot topic right now. And I'm very excited that this bill was just introduced yesterday and it's gaining a lot of bipartisan momentum. I'll be carrying a bill. It's a bill that I started last year, but we were unable to move forward with it because of the pandemic. Although we did incorporate a portion of it into the School Finance Act last year, and that's around our uniform mill levy for school finance. What we asked is that we are hoping that the Supreme Court will weigh in on a decision about whether or not we are currently interpreting our uniform mill levy question in our states for school finance. And then lastly, this is a bill that I thought I did not have room for on my bill card, but because I dropped my pre-file bill, I'm back on it. This is a bill that we successfully passed out of the Senate last year, but then due to COVID, was not able to move forward, and that's a ban on exotic animals in traveling circuses. I will be carrying a number of bills that are affiliated with the Statutory Revision Committee. These are considered like really nerdy, not very consequential bills because it's all about cleaning up our statutes and eliminating anachronisms or aligning definitions if there are two definitions in different places in the statutes, making sure that everything is up to date and revised. They're non-controversial, and so there tend to be quite a few of them that come out of this committee, but our first committee has not met yet. We don't meet until Friday of this week. And then lastly, I'm carrying a number of sunset bills. These are bills where there is a program or a law that is set in statute to sunset after a particular period of time, unless you pass a bill to continue that. And I will be carrying a bill to continue the Colorado Special Education Advisory Board. I've also picked up a couple of other bills since we put together this presentation. I will be carrying another supplemental bill for the JBC see. This one is going to be on the Main Street Revitalization Bill. This is a transportation bill. I'm also carrying a bill that will start in the Senate, which is going to create a recycling and composting enterprise, really looking at the end usage of recycling and composting and putting some resources into making sure that we have the right infrastructure so that we can accomplish more recycling and composting in our state. And that will be an enterprise, so it will pay for itself. And it will have to follow the new guidelines of the enterprise rules that was a proposition that passed in the fall, and it'll follow those rules. So I think those are all of the ones.
All right. So where can you find out all this information for yourself? You can go to the main source of information. That's going to be the legislative website, leg.colorado.gov. That's going to have the official schedule. It's going to give you the options to watch or listen. That's going to be, usually it's up in the top right corner, I think is where those links are. There's contact information for all the legislators. All of the information you'll ever want to know about every bill. They'll have a summary, the bill title, the bill text, as well as the fiscal notes if you want to know about those. And the search for your legislator tool. I think most of you folks on this call probably know who your legislators are. We're probably them, but that's if you're not from this area and you want to know who your legislator is, you can find out on that site. All right, I'll just keep going then. So if you want to watch online, you can go to the watch link, which is up on the top. You can find out what's going on. They'll give you a schedule of which committees you can listen to. You can tune in. You can watch us on TV on the Colorado channel. You can go to coloradochannel.net. If you have cable, I think it's channel 165 on YouTube. I don't know what. Didn't know it was a number on YouTube, but I guess I'm behind the times on that one. But you can listen to all of the things that happen. Everything is publicly broadcast. You can always tune in and watch. The times of committees tend to be widely different because it depends on how long committee hearings last. So if you're looking for a specific bill in committee, it could be very late at night. It all depends. So just check your schedule and check back. Sometimes Twitter is a good place. People will indicate that some committees that they're running late will go through, but just be aware of that. Whoops, and here is the information on how to contact us.
So if you have any questions or anything, you are always welcome to come and visit us. We put in this very comprehensive slide where our offices are located. We tend to have 2 phone numbers that you can reach us at, our office phone number as well as our cell phone numbers. All of our office numbers start with 866, and those numbers stay with the office. So if you look at Lindsey's office number, it's the same number that Representative Tracy Kraft-Tharp used to have, because the number stays with the office. So Senate District 19 will always be 4840 extension. Also, you have there our email addresses. Email is probably the best way to get in touch with me. Also, we have all of this information contained on our individual websites, which are all very similar. Rachel for Colorado, Brianna for Colorado, Lindsey for Colorado. So you could also contact us or follow us on social media, such as our Twitter handles, our Facebook handles. And then we have also put on the slide the name of our legislative aides. Traditionally, we have a lot more people working in our offices, interns and whatnot, but this year, because of COVID, it's a little bit different. The building is very empty right now, but we definitely want to still make ourselves as available to you as possible. So we'll leave this slide up for a little bit as we transition over to the Q&A. We did encourage you, if you have any questions, to put them in the Q&A, and we'll just kind of go through them. We'll either answer those questions live or type answers into the chat box. So our first question was around I believe student loan debt, and the individual that wrote that right now in Colorado there are over 743,000 people that have student loan debt, and the average debt burden is typically more than 38,000. And here in Colorado statewide, we carry approximately $28.6 billion in student debt, and Colorado borrowers currently owe around $9.1 billion in private student loan debt. So as you can imagine, this debt is largely impacting borrowers of color, low income borrowers the most. And this individual would like to know a little bit about how we're planning to prioritize student debt reform and college affordability. I will go ahead and answer this one live, and then if Lindsey or Brianna have suggestions, you can also weigh in. But in Colorado, we have passed a few bills around college affordability and debt reform, but there's a national conversation that is also taking place right now on this. And I think we are staying in tune with whether or not there's going to be some sort of debt loan forgiveness from the federal government, and how much. Right now, I've heard that there is about $10,000 on the low end, up to $50,000 on the high end, and we have no way of knowing whether the federal government will move forward with that or not. But the state of Colorado is not allowed to do debt forgiveness. So because they typically are federal student loan programs. So, but we are very mindful of the impacts of student loan debt, and we are looking at ways that we can address the affordability of college, just generally speaking. And I will mention that we've done also a lot of work on student financial aid this year. Last year, when the pandemic struck, we had to cut $3.3 billion from our state budget. A lot of that money came from education and from our institutions of higher ed, but the student aid piece was largely held intact, just because we understand how difficult it is to be able to afford college at this time.
Yeah, and I mean, that's really what the biggest problem in Colorado with the cost of higher education is that we've just been unable to subsidize the cost, which makes it prohibitively expensive here. And we're always trying to find ways we can fund higher education better. The Joint Technology Committee, we are working to try to find every dollar we can to fund a lot of the technology initiatives that these schools are going through to make sure that they have a competitive edge against other schools. Because if we don't fund those things, we're going to be behind on the cutting edge things that these schools can do. So we're trying to do everything we can, but the federal government, has had this conversation. Most recently, I've heard that the president is committed to $10,000 of debt relief, which is a start. It's not going to actually make the biggest difference, but it will make some difference in a lot of people. And forbearance is going on right now on some of those loans. I have a student loan. I don't have to pay it until September, which is kind of nice. So there's not a whole lot we can do here at the state level on that particular area.
And I'll just add to, I'm someone who has a lot of school loans from law school. I'll be paying those for the next 15 years. But one thing I've been working on for a really long time when I worked in the Obama administration, was focusing on trade schools. When I was there, they were really focusing on trade schools, apprenticeships, those sorts of things. Because I think for a lot of people, and my brother is one of those, he's just not someone who wanted to go to college. He wants to be outside, work with his hands. So those are also great options that I think we need to get in front of high school kids and show them that they can do other things than just the college track, and have really good paying jobs doing those. So thank you.
Kathy Blake saying, please cover the bills related to healthcare. Well, out of all the bills I think we're running, I'm probably running the only one that's sort of healthcare related, is that mental health wellness bill. Happy to talk a little bit more about that one. This bill probably would have passed last year, and the big I wanted to go to the issue of what a mandate is, because the governor has the Office of Saving People Money on Healthcare. It's a very, very important issue for the governor to save people money on healthcare. We would like to make sure that these kinds of mental health wellness exams are paid for by insurance, that they are not going to have a cost. If there's a cost, it's another barrier to people to get these wellness exams and get that checkup. Not everyone is going to do it. Not everyone is going to have an issue that they want to be able to talk about or feel like they need to. So it's not going to be as widespread as a physical, and not everyone gets a physical either, even though you can get it. But if there is an upfront cost to the insurance companies to cover these, there will be a savings on the back end of some money that's going to be saved by the prevention of things escalating to a level where they might get to a crisis point. The other problem is that even if the governor doesn't veto our bill because he's afraid of the cost going up, we may get fined by CMS in the federal government. And that is something the governor doesn't also want to happen, because that will cost us money. But, we are ready to fight any kind of fine that might come our way, because again, we don't feel like this is a mandate on insurance. This is something that should have been provided for a long time because of parity that happened in 2008 and even earlier in 1996. So if we have to, we'll fight this all the way to the Supreme Court if we have to. But we feel that this is an important enough issue that if we don't fight against this and we don't fight for this for people now, this is going to be something that's going to be impossible to get for people later on. So this is a really important issue that we would really like to get, people that are passionate about this, who really want to see this through, to make sure that you're talking to your legislators and the governor to make sure that this is something we pass and we fight for, not just for the people of Colorado, but for the people of the United States of America.
I think there will be a number of healthcare bills that will be run this year in particular. I'm hearing a lot of talk about the public option bill that will be returning. And if you're interested in those type of bills, I would follow the committee schedule for the Health and Human Services Committee, as well as the counterpart in the House. They have a different name. Brianna, what's the name of it?
It's the Health and Insurance Committee. That's one of the committees I'm on.
And so those committees typically are assigned bills that that are related to health and human services. So also, just because you don't see us talking about those issues doesn't mean that we don't care about them. We are limited to 5 bills. Although, as we explained, there are ways that you can get late bills if you get permission or if you're carrying a committee bill. And generally, as was explained in the video, where do those ideas come from? Typically, my bill ideas come from constituents that bring those ideas to me, or they're projects that I'm working on that take a few years, or projects that are related to committees that we serve on. because we have an expertise in that area. So I don't want people to think that we don't care about those issues. Oftentimes we're not carrying the bill, but we are definitely active in the conversations, or they're coming to our committee, or we're co-sponsors of those particular bills, and we'll definitely be weighing in on them. I wanted to jump to one of the next questions that was on here that was specific to my circus bill. I don't disagree with the question, which is considering that COVID-19 is directly related to viruses from exotic animals being transmitted to humans, it would be good if the exotic animal ban also included other sources besides the circus trade. And again, I don't disagree with you. However, that all bills have to be contained to the bill title. You're not allowed to go beyond the bill title, and the bill title was specifically for exotic animals and traveling circuses. And so I would have to put in a whole new bill if I were going to try to broaden it beyond circus animals, because it wouldn't currently fit under my title. So while I can see how that might be a good idea, it's just not going to be possible under the existing bill. Did somebody want to take Skip's question, or do you want me to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, he's coming off the JBC from last year. You may have a little bit more insight on that issue.
So Skip wanted to know what our thoughts are on the recent proposal for the salary adjustment for Colorado state employees. When we put together the budget, and in particular things such as employee relations and salaries, that is almost exclusively a dance that is done between the Joint Budget Committee and the governor's office. So the governor put in his proposal, which was for a 2.05% adjustment. And then the JBC, however, gets the final say because they're the ones that put together the state budget. And they actually decided that they preferred a 2.5% instead of a 2.05%. And that is because of some recognition of the huge decrease that we had to make last year in the para contribution. And so I would just say that as legislators that are not on the Joint Budget Committee, it's kind of out of our hands, although we can communicate to our representatives on the JBC to let them know what we think, and that could influence their decision. And then that will not be finalized until after figure setting and when the budget is actually proposed to the state legislature. But I wanted to skip down to a question below from it says anonymous attendee about the impacts of COVID and the pandemic. And how are we going to go about prioritizing COVID relief measures? In the short term, we are going to be taking up a whole series of bills called supplementals. These are budget bills that are happening next week. They're actually going to be in the Senate Appropriations Committee on Tuesday. And what these are they are additions to our state budget. Last spring, when we put together the budget and we had to make some very difficult decisions because of COVID, we were kind of guessing about how we thought the recovery would go and what we thought our citizens would need in the coming year. And every year, as our practice, about halfway through the year, so the budget is implemented in July. And so when we come back as a legislature, we kind of take a look and we say, how close were we when we put together that budget? Did we over estimate how much was needed, or did we underestimate? And then we shore up the budget accordingly. And so there are going to be a large number of supplementals this year that are actually requesting more resources so that we can address things like COVID. What has happened is many of these departments had to move forward with unexpected expenses. And so now we're going to go in and we're going to supplement their budgets with some federal aid that we've received, and then also some general funds, because we feel that it's really important that we address these struggles that our folks in Colorado are experiencing. And you will notice in a majority of those supplementals that there is a very precise zeroing in on our communities of color and our low-income communities, and how the impacts have really been disproportionate. So keep an eye out for those supplementals. And then we're going to have the conversation all over again when we take up the state budget for next year.
I can go through the next one, Adeline. I see your climate change or climate crisis question, specifically wondering how we're planning to prioritize addressing this issue. And so I will tell you, Adeline, I grew up in Colorado. I think, we need to do whatever we can to protect, our beautiful state here. And I'll tell you, as Rachel said, we only get a certain amount of bills, and I've kind of leaned towards the juvenile and family law bills because that's my background, but it certainly does not mean that I think that, we shouldn't be focusing on the climate crisis. And I'll tell you that I've reached out to a lot of great companies, one being Signal Tech, who I just did an Instagram Live interview with. And they're trying to pair with the tech community and businesses to have a really large group of people involved, and really try to go at figuring out what we need to do immediately to help with this issue now. So I would definitely, if you want more info on that, I would check out that interview I did, but I really appreciate you pushing this issue and bringing it up. And I will continue to engage as many people as I can on how to go about to fix this. So thank you.
Yeah, and I'm on the Energy and Environment Committee, and we hear a lot of bills on ways we can save energy or reduce our carbon footprints. And I know there's several bills coming this year that are going to really add to the greater plan that we did implement last year, 2 years ago, on setting up Colorado to be, using a lot less carbon in our power grid and our emissions. So one of those bills I know is coming soon is going to be on buildings that are of a certain size that are going to have to go through an evaluation to see how efficient they are, and then they'll need to make adjustments on changes to those buildings to accommodate those more efficiencies. So it sounds like we're telling these companies and these places with these large buildings what to do, but it's really helping them understand that there's a lot of things they could do which would actually save them money over the long term, and actually, give them money back in the end. So, a lot of these efficiencies are kind of overlooked because, there is an initial investment to do it, but it does have long-term savings, not just to the environment, but to the customer, to the person who actually owns the building. So that's one of the bills that's coming. And there's several bills that we're going to hear that are really counter to what we want to accomplish in the environmental space. So we're going to be looking at those very closely and seeing if those are bills we want to get through, or these bills that we want to put an end to make sure that we're staying on track to what we've put forward in the last couple of years.
So I dropped into the chat a link to a story that was listed in the Mountain Town News, and it was actually published by a local author named Alan Best, who does a really good job of tracking the energy and environment legislation that comes through the Capitol. And this is a 15,000-foot view of Colorado's legislative climate and energy landscape. And if you take a look at that article, it lists at least a minimum of 12 different bills that are percolating, that are being sponsored by other legislators. But then it actually goes on. I think that the last count that I looked at, it was up in the high 20s. So I definitely think that there will be lots of legislation this session on climate. And I think part of that is because last year there were a lot of pieces of climate legislation in the works that had to be halted because of COVID. And I know that everyone was very eager to pick up those conversations and move forward with them this year. So take a look at that article. We are rounding up here our last 10 minutes. We wanted to go ahead and introduce our other legislators and other elected officials that have joined us today. And so I'm just going to go ahead very quickly. And while I'm introducing them, maybe Michelle can go ahead and promote Carla Esser and Catherine Scully as attendees or as participants, and then we'll kick things off here with Commissioner Tracy Krafler.
Hey, good to see you all. I'm Tracy Krafler. I'm your County Commissioner. I represent District 1, which is this north area, Arvada, Westminster area. So let me just do a quick update. Many of you know Dr. Mark Johnson, who is the Executive Director of our Department of Public Health, and he has retired, which is very sad. He had intended to retire last spring and go on a bike trip to Holland with his wife, but did not because of the COVID crisis. But then, so he stuck around while we were building our infrastructure and did retire at the end of the summer. Dr. Dawn Comstock has started as the Executive Director this week. So she will be quickly catching up to speed. The good news is that there is good news in terms of COVID and that our numbers are dropping. Not long ago, we had over 100 people. At one point, we had 300 people in the hospital because of COVID. Today, or actually, I can't say today, it would be Tuesday, we had 36 people in Jefferson County in the hospital. So that is sad for them, good news for all of us to see those numbers drop. 63% of those people 70 and over have had at least one dosage of the vaccination. 20% of those 65 to 69 have had at least one dosage, so that's good. 7,000 educators have had vaccinations in this last week, so we are moving along. Last fall, when the legislature was in special session, because I was there then, passed a bill to provide stimulus, help out with businesses that were really struggling. Jefferson County cut those checks and mailed those checks out on Friday. So that's good. And over 300 businesses were able to get checks. So good to see you all. Just want to let you know that I'm working with Catherine Scully as the liaison to the Westminster City Council and Lauren Simpson as the liaison to the Arvada City Council about putting together a town meeting. We'll be starting that out March 27th. At 9:30, we'll be starting out on Zoom. So we will be including the city councils from both Arvada and Westminster. We'll be bringing in the firefighters, the Apex board, and legislators as you wish, so that this is really a one-stop shop for what's happening in the Arvada Westminster area. So we'll be giving you all more information about that. Thanks, guys. Good to see you all.
So we'll go next to Commissioner Amy Kerr.
Thanks, and good to see everyone. And Tracy really gave a great update there. The only thing I would add on is we are focused at the county level on sustainability and climate change as well. The previous board did pass a climate action plan, and we have a sustainability commission that is really focused on underlining the action in the climate action plan. And so we're we're doing some work around that to get that up and going. I've seen quite a few questions around climate and sustainability here. So just want to let you know. And as Tracy said, and we're focused on getting through COVID-19, but we also are looking out past that too, and making sure that we're going to be working on other issues as well.
All right, thanks. And then last but not least, we have Catherine Scully. Do you want to say a few words?
I would love to, thanks. This has been a great town hall, very informative, and really want to thank Representative Tatone, Senator Zenzinger, and Representative Daugherty for their great work today. Want to promote our town hall for Arvada, Westminster, in the county of Jefferson County, as Tracy Crafthart mentioned. And in Westminster, we're very focused on resilience and recovery through COVID. We've spent just about $4 million on businesses and helping people with housing situations and utility bills, really trying to build a program of recovery. And then we too are also working on sustainability and getting ready to release that information to our constituents. And in the next month, we'll be working on our strategic plan and updating our strategic plan. So thank you for a great town hall.
All right, well, thanks for joining us today. I have a couple things I just want to tell everyone. We did a little quick food drive over the National Day of Service in January. We collected around 1,000 pounds of food and other supplies. So thank you to those who participated in that. We're gonna try doing that again at some point in the next month or so, just to make sure we're addressing our hungry folks in the community who really need it right now. So that's one thing I really had right now. I think I have, we're going to be doing something a little bit different with, instead of doing the beers and the coffee, we're going to do open office hours, and we're gonna have something new. So stay tuned for that. If you don't have my newsletter, if you don't sign up, get on that. We're going to be doing those weekly now that we're in session, so you'll get lots of information about everything happening, and it's a good resource. BriannaForColorado.com.
Yeah, and I'll just echo what Rep. Tatone said. I've got a weekly newsletter coming out that we're working on, so feel free to sign up for that. Other than that, I think, like I said, please reach out. I'm so humbled and excited to be working on the legislation that I'm working on this year, and I want it to be the best it can be. So if you have any suggestions or anything, please reach out to me. I would love to talk to you all, and thank you so much for joining this morning.
And I'll just round things out here by saying thank you so much for joining us today. Our next town hall will be on the third Saturday, which is Saturday, March 20th. We started late here. You know, we came into session for 3 short days, and then we took a month break, and then we just started up this week. But even though our legislative calendar is somewhat delayed, the Joint Budget Committee has been meeting this entire time. And so in March, right around that time that we'll be doing our legislative town hall, is when we expect the Joint Budget Committee to be coming forward with the budget. So we're going to try and look at having some guest speakers to maybe talk a little bit about that. Last year, the budget process was delayed pretty significantly because of COVID and because we were out for 10 weeks. And when we came back, passing that budget and the School Finance Act were pretty important. This year, it'll be the normal timeline as far as the budget budget goes, but it doesn't feel normal because we started so late. So it seems like it's coming very quickly. Normally it's in the middle of our session, and in this case, it's going to be about a month after we started. So bills are going to be moving very, very quickly because of our little month timeout. So if you have any questions or concerns about legislation that is in the works or that has been introduced, please feel free to reach out to any of us, and we'll do our best to be able to address those questions. And we hope that you'll be able to join us next month on March 20th for our next town hall. Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure to be able to talk about the things that are passionate to us, our legislation, as well as the legislative process. And we hope that you enjoy your weekend.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.